Thanks for joining us today on our panel for the future of drilling. I'm Jody Conrad, the CEO of Krux Analytics, and I'm thrilled to be facilitating the panel today. Drilling sits at the core of mining operations, yet it's undergoing rapid transformation. Today, we're going to explore what's changing, what's working, and what's coming next. I'm joined by three exceptional leaders. Jimmy Barrieau, VP of Commercial Drilling Services at Boart Longyear, who's led digital transformation and operational excellence for over 20 years. Luis Roble, Project Coordinator at Tinto, with a deep technical expertise in geological engineering and drilling optimization across multiple global organizations. And Michelle Carey, the Chief Officer of Digital and Orebody Knowledge at IMDEX, with decades of experience in geochemistry, innovation, and strategic growth. Thanks for joining us today. Together, we're going to unpack three major themes: technology, AI, and workforce pressures, how automation and AI are being applied today and where we're headed; operational efficiency, safety, and sustainability, how expectations around ESG and safety are shaping drill programs; and site-wide optimization, moving beyond just the rig to unlock full value by connecting people, data, hardware, and systems. With that, we'll get started. So first question I'd like to ask the panel is, and maybe we'll start with Luis on this one, is what are the most significant technological advancements you've adopted within your drilling operations over the past 5 years?
Thank you, Jody, and thank you for this question and also for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. So hello to everybody. Asking your question, I'm seeing the market moving to the automatization and digitalization, which is the era of regulating data. And Rio Tinto is not away from that. In Rio Tinto, we're always thinking on putting away the person who is in the site, away from the line of fire. We call a LOF, or line of fire. And for Rio Tinto, that is one of the most important, the safety. And sometimes, or maybe most of the time, safety means technology. Okay. So what we have adopted in the last 5 years, I can start by saying that according to our procedure, we have implemented road handling and that's mandatory for all our RC projects, okay, and it's recommended for diamond drilling projects. And also we have implemented what we call the core pusher. The core pusher is an hydraulic system that push out the core from the inner tube. By doing that, we avoid the helpers putting their hands there, and so we are trying to improve from that space. And also something that we have implemented in the last 2 years, especially in South America, we have started by using cameras on site, giving real time images from the drill site. And by having that on site, that gives us the possibility to find those gaps in terms of safety. We want to have those opportunities to improve our safety in our drill pads. On the other hand, it's about the digitalization. We have implemented the Krux system, which is a system that put all together the administrative data from drilling. We now can find all the data together in one single system that allows us to have daily drilling reports, to see the data in real time, to manage in a better way the time that we invest on the billing reports. And what we want is to reduce the time that we invest by reviewing this data and use the time in other tasks. For example, to put our eyes in what really matters, which is the safety. Years ago, we had our supervisor, for example, watching the drilling data day by day, or maybe investing hours by the end of the month to review the billing report. Now we do that in an easier way, and we use that time to to improve other things like safety. And now we have visibility in terms of data. Now we can predict some um, you know, production in terms of how many meters we're going to drill in some areas based on the historical data. So basically, those are some of the implementation that we have had in the last 5 years, Jody.
Great, thanks. Jimmy, what about your perspective from the drilling operations side?
A lot of the same as Luis. He's mentioned many of the technological advancements we've incorporated into our business, but I'll focus on three particular ones we've seen as game changers. One has been our LF160 and Freedom Loader. So to Luis's point, moving to the rod handling, the old era of cable rigs, they were much more kinetic, and we've moved that driller assistant away from that live work or that line of fire potential. We've seen roughly a 54% decrease in global recordable injuries since that Freedom Loader paired rig has reached critical mass in comparison to the older cable rigs that we've used for a generation. So that by far, the safety enhancements with rod handling has been one of the biggest impacts. We've also incorporated drill control interface, we call it DCI, in particular in our underground rigs, which provides real-time information to the drillers. It also separates the drillers via an umbilical from the drill rig, again, improving the safety component of drill operation. We can do unattended drilling with this device incorporated into our LM fleet of rigs. Press a button and it can drill a tire run by itself. And we can also put a USB stick into that control interface, extract data, and use that proactively to learn, train drillers, and improve our operations. And from that DCI, we've incorporated that into our LF160 as well. We're now releasing the LF160i. It's full analytics. If you have Wi-Fi on your site, you can see the exact metrics from that rig, including RPM, your penetration rate, downhole pressures from wherever you are in the world. So those are the big ones we've seen in our business over the past 5 years, Jody.
Great. And Michelle, from the digital perspective, what you've seen, bringing kind of the both together as well as looking at, geoscientists and more from the geology side, what have you seen the advancements in the last 5 years be?
Yeah, thanks, Jody. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. Obviously, as we sit today in terms of what's possible, on the AI front in particular, that's increasingly becoming a very broad space. But if we talk about what's actually happening today, and you could actually hear it a little bit in Luis and Jimmy's responses, is that I think particularly at the drill rig, we're still at the getting the fundamentals of data collection right part of the process. We've seen uptake in particular over the last 5 years of digitization of what were paper-based workflows, and of course that's a space that Krux has played in. We're starting to see some of the things that Jimmy mentioned around taking sensor data from drill rigs and using that to supplement that information. But in terms of that being ubiquitous and in terms of people using that data for AI, I think we've got a fair way to go. But if we think about the things that are happening on both sides of that process, we are starting to see people look to use AI to plan the drilling program in the first place. And we're also increasingly, and probably the most predominant thing is we're starting to see the use of AI type approaches just downstream of the core farm, of the drill rig at the core farm, with people, geologists using those sorts of approaches to start interpret the drill core. So I think there's a lot of opportunity at the drill rig, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, and so when we talk about AI and in the drilling operations, Jimmy, you just talked about some of the, the digital data coming off the sensors on the rig. So you guys have started to get that baseline. Have you started to adapt any AI or machine learnings in with that data? Or are you still at that, that beginning stage of collecting the data and starting to put it to work?
We've been on the road for a while. We're up to speed now, and we're ready to deploy what we're calling our LMR 110. This is the Longyear module robotic rig, which will operate with AI, and it will drill itself. There'll be no human interface whatsoever. We've successfully drilled underground in Australia with this rig over 7,000 meters. Boart Longyear Drilling Services will bring this to market this year, and we're planning to scale up to have 30 in the market over the next few years. And this is complete autonomous underground diamond drilling. And we believe it's a true change to the industry. It's what the industry needs, and it'll be the future of drilling. We have visions of this on surface, heli-portable work, for example. We drop the rig off, it anchors itself, it drills off a magazine of 100 tubes, all while perhaps connected to Starlink, telling you everything you need to know, Luis, as a customer of Boart Longyear, all of your data, your metrics, and perhaps in-hole geophysics as well, directly communicated from the rig into the cloud and interpreted from an AI perspective. So the future's here. It's just scaling and getting the right investment and partnership from our global client base.
Yeah. Luis, how does Rio Tinto see AI, on the drill sites today and the future of it? Maybe, what's the next step where you see that advantage happening?
Thanks for that question. We are using the AI in other areas, in the geology area, for example. At this stage, we haven't implemented the AI per se in the drilling stage or the drilling activities at Rio Tinto. We are waiting for those companies like Jimmy are proposing those technology so that we can analyze together, to maybe to do a trial in the future. I am a person who believes that in order to the AI works the same as the driller, I can make a really good comparison. When we have a person drilling in a drilling rig, that driller has their own AI, which is what I call the experience. So based on the experience, the driller decide what to do according to what the problem is. So if we get back to the AI system, the experience is basically the data. The question is, do we have enough data, to avoid having an expert drilling on site? That's something that we need to define in the near future. And that is what I call the big data. I remember a few years ago when I was in some project that I was located, I started by playing with numbers, because we had many rigs, the same rock, multiple drillers, and I was starting taking notes about what are the drilling parameters for every single driller for each rock, and then I started to compare them with person drill more, with driller has less deviation, and why, and I started to think, right, and that was a primitive machine learning or AI. So then based on the data, I decided to think by myself, hey, this driller is using these parameters and have these results. So I think that is the key for the future to be done by the AI, to have this in an automatically process so that they can give us recommendations based on the data. Again, I don't know if we have the enough data to put away one driller from the site, but I think that is the future.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
think
point. Oh, go ahead,
I
Michelle.
was going to say, I think you're right, Luis. We're going to need the sensor data, but we're going to need those training inputs as well. The how has the driller responded, and then how do you teach the AI to respond in the way a really experienced driller will. So that will certainly be part of the challenge as we step through this.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that too is when we look at the data sets that we're collecting, if you're too one-dimensional, you can't, extract some of those nuances that are actually really important that comes from a person's feeling or experience or knowledge, right? And so as much as you have the historical data, there is still some real life and real life experiences that come from there. Which leads right into my next question. I'll leave it open for who wants to answer this one, but how do we see AI and machine learning and with the data we're collecting today actually help us when we look at labor shortages or skill gaps within the market? How can we use, or are we using it anywhere to try to help address some of those issues? I think there is definitely a labor shortage when you look out there for skilled drillers. And Jimmy, you talked to the future of here's a rig that's going to anchor itself and drill the hole. That's great, but there's multiple steps between now and then, and we got to keep moving down that path. So any thoughts on that?
Sure, I'll jump right in. In some jurisdictions, this is a huge hurdle for us for the business. We'll bring 10 new hires in the door, train them up for 2 weeks, and probably on week 3 or 4, maybe 2 out of those 10 are still with us, and this is what they want to do. That was the old mentality. What we've seen with adding the rod handling technology, changing the work environment, meaning reducing the demand on the driller assistants from a manual labor perspective, we're able to retain more people, attract more people, and more interestingly, having a more diverse workforce. We have more female employees now ever working on drill rigs because you don't have to lift 200 pounds and the old mentality that once was the tough macho drilling world. It's diversified. We can recruit more and retain more people. And then back to the automation side, we can actually look at a technician rather than a drill crew of 10 people. You could have 2 technicians running 5 autonomous rigs in an underground environment. You think of the impacts of that to the miner. You now have exponentially less camp rooms to fill, people to feed. Your overall costs, all in sustaining costs, comes down considerably if we can get to that automation point. So that's where we're seeing the advancements and advantages of moving in this direction, where we have very difficult labor markets in some of the jurisdictions where we operate.
Yeah. Maybe Michelle, from your perspective on the software side, from the geologist side, where do we see some of that? Because I think there's labor shortages there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways the challenges are not particularly dissimilar, where we similarly are finding it harder and harder to either find people in the first place or to then retain those people to stay, particularly in remote core farm type situations or, out supporting remote drill rigs. And so I think in both spaces you end up with the same sort of effect where you can supplement the geoscience workforce with the ability to do tasks in a more productive way. We talk a lot about augmenting geoscientists rather than replacing. And I think across both of these spaces, the way we think about it a lot too is also leveling up, because it means that whoever you're putting in the field with digital support, you can expect a more consistent level of information being collected by them. You're not so reliant on them having a high level of experience. Because I think that's, obviously the other challenge here is we all know that, a great driller or a great geoscientist is probably going to achieve more than somebody who hasn't had a lot of training yet. And really, I think the way AI can help to level up that space is something that we're seeing more and more of.
Luis, maybe, from your perspective, what are some real challenges that you've seen as you're trying to implement AI, or you have, you're looking at implementing these new automated solutions and stuff like that? Like, are you seeing some challenges when you're bringing that into your operations?
Yeah, there are some principal challenges by implementing anything new, right? Every time that we need to implement something new, there are going to be some people that are skeptical about implementing this. So I think one of the first target will be not the problem. I think will be the people, right? We need to find the way how we can convince those stakeholders that maybe the future, which is the AI introduced in the drilling stage or the drilling activities, can be the solution, right? So we need to focus on those, early adopters that I call, which are the ones that want to take the risks to implement something new. I can remember I read in some article, in the past when the society created a calculator, some people were asking themselves or saying, "Hey, why are you using the calculator? By using the calculator, then you are gonna stop using your brain." I think that's something similar nowadays with the AI. The key is that, I mean, by the end of the day, we are gonna be using the AI. The question will be when, right? So that's what I see about this, Jody.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, a lot of people get worried that AI is going to take their jobs, and, you hear some of this stuff, but you still have to train AI. You still have to train the models. What we're just doing is taking people and upskilling them into another place where they can help train and build the models. And no matter what kind of change there is, there's always fear. Change management, I find, is one of the hardest things in business. And it doesn't matter if it's going from paper to Excel, or if it's going, from manual rod huddling to automated rod huddling, right? They're with change their sphere. And so, I think it's a big thing, and it is, you need those people that can embrace and take on that risk, and then you see people start to follow. So that moves right into kind of, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there is something that was moving inside my head. Another big challenge that I can see is that every single rock, every single formation has their own way to be drilled, right? And every rock has their own, type of beat, type of mud, type of revolution, and then that is where the big data comes in, right? By the software doing all the statistics, math, and everything, by using the big data or the mining data, we can have those answer on how to drill that specific rock. So that is what I see another big challenge.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and so I was going to actually just take now, so we've talked a little bit about AI and some of the transformation, maybe just from each of you is, where do you see that next area within your operations as that next thing to be disrupted by AI or machine learning? What is that next evolution or next step that you see, in the immediate future? Maybe we can start with Michelle.
Oh gosh. Well, I think you probably know, Jody, that by nature we're all, myself and IMDEX, we're always thinking probably a little further out in terms of our horizon. I think, and actually, if you describe, the space that Luis just spoke to, this is a space that we think about quite a lot around how, rocks and drillers can interact with each other, and how you create that connectivity between the two a little more, right? So that, and again, this is something that really good drillers do naturally today, where they can sense the rock properties, right? Actually, by putting, by listening to the signals coming back from the rig, so to speak, and then responding. And I think we have all of the pieces of the puzzle in terms of sensors that collect rock properties today. We actually do have AI that takes that sensor data and turns it into rock properties. So how do you actually use that to start to create some of these real-time loops? Real-time decision making is something that's really been what we've been looking to achieve for the industry for a long time. We see some of it now around simple use cases like, do we adjust the direction that the drill hole's going? Do we, make sure that the quality of our data is fit for purpose? But I think creating these real-time decision loops around the rock is this, therefore this is the way we should drill it, or the rock is this, and therefore as a geoscientist I should stop this hole and go on and drill another one, or I should keep drilling this hole because there's still more mineralization to be seen. I think it's that connectivity between the two worlds where really we'd be looking to try and see some additional disruption and change.
Okay. Jimmy, what do you think?
On the top of my mind at the moment is just a nod to Michelle and Luis for mentioning the art behind that driller. We don't want to replace drillers. We want to help them and add technology to improve their jobs and ultimately their bonus, their earning potential. So that's where I think it's going to go. We're going to have that combination of what technology works, what adoption we can get, because it's a value add to that individual, that driller, that drill crew, that'll attract people to our business, and they'll want to be part of an industry that's fastly evolving. Those are the quick thoughts, Jody.
Great. Luis, anything to add on that?
I mean, AI is changing the world. It's changing the way how we do the things. Some people are saying that the AI is going to destroy the doctors, lawyers. I think that is not going to happen. We are going to need the drillers. What is going to be changed is the way how the drillers do their job, right? Now they will have more tools to take better decisions based on data. What I think is if you take the decision not only based on your experience, but also in the data, there in that way they are going to improve the way how they do their work. So I don't think that we are going to have less drillers.
Yeah, great. Okay. I'm going to just kind of switch topics now. I mean, we're going to move more into that operational efficiency group. One thing that comes to mind is, across the different organizations, everyone, ESG is a big topic. Everyone talks about it, but each industry obviously reports on it differently and is seeing different movements in it. So from each of your perspectives, what sustainability metrics, are you feeling within your organization the pressure to improve on? And how are you responding to that? I think ESG constantly evolves from a definition point of view. So just kind of curious how that's impacting your operations and how that's doing. Start with Luis.
Yeah, I mean, the HSE, sustainability, environmental are key aspect in this industry. Every time that we are having more pressure on, on improving this kind of things. And for Rio Tinto, those are one of the main goals internally. Every time that we are gonna start, a drilling project, the first thing that we are looking for are those things, HSE, environmental impact. So based on that, we are, always looking for the best contractor that can share the same values with us. It's not always to say, hey, let's take this contractor because he's charging less money in the, in the long term time. Sometimes those cost more. So that's what we are always trying to look for, to care about those topics. And Rio Tinto has their own values, right? So that's what I can say.
Yeah, Jimmy, from the drilling contractor perspective, what do you think the key things that you're seeing that pressure to improve on when it comes to ESG?
Yeah, look, back to Luis's point, a safe and environmentally sound operation is vital for a drilling business. You don't have a business if you can't operate safely, if you can't operate within the environmental permits and controls that our customers and mining houses have. And these are part of our core values as well as a global drilling business. Where we're seeing the most pressure, I'd say, is around the emissions, scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. We've baselined our data for our global fleet of around 600 rigs. We know what, on average, we could produce in a given year. Now our objective is to strive to reduce those emission targets in both scopes, scope 1 and scope 2. What we're doing right now, we're deploying the first electric LF-160. So this will be fully electric engine, powered on surface via the grid. We'll be plugging this in Australia this year, and we believe the market is going to demand more of this type of offering. And we'll be moving away from high cost diesel engines that produce a lot of emissions for those valuable exploration programs and mining definition programs. So that's what we're doing to really fine tune our emissions. And back to the key here, if you can't operate safely and environmentally sound, you're not going to have a business very long in the next era of mining.
Yeah. Michelle, how do you think data transparency and real-time monitoring can improve safety outcomes within the drilling operations?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think perhaps people's default position is to assume that a Big Brother type piece is an answer to that, but I really don't think it is. I mean, I think we all know the reality is that people's response to feeling monitored for supervisory purposes can often be to try and avoid the systems that are monitoring them. I think it's much more interesting to think about this in terms of the training opportunities that it provides for people. I think when we look to make data available to drillers and resource companies, that's generally the lens we have in mind, is how do you make sure that people can see as quickly as possible what's going wrong that needs to be changed, so that behavior can get adjusted, in essence, again, in a real-time loop. And so that, issues can be seen, things can be resolved, and everybody can move on. So I think of it much more in terms of how you use information and to train, and shared information to mean that both sides of the fence are learning from that data, rather than it being sort of someone's watching you type affair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Can I add something to that?
absolutely.
Yeah, I believe that the real data visibility on real time is a good advantage in terms of avoiding, for example, re-drilling. Let's say in that example, imagine that we are drilling right at 300 meters, and we don't know that we have deviation, say like that, and then we have to re-drill again because the target is is different than that. So we have to expose our team to drill again, to do maybe another hole. So I can say that to have that data in real time to improve the decision making is a good advantage for the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a great add, Lisa. I was actually going to ask you as the next question is how do you balance, operational efficiency, with, your large scale projects and trying to get stuff across. And so what you basically said there, a little bit is it's not about how fast you necessarily drill, the more accurate, because obviously there are compounding effects when it comes to safety or the environmental concerns, if you aren't seeing that feedback in real time is what I heard. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And let me add something about the environmental goals that we have in Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto is committed to reducing its greenhouse gas emission by
Mm-hmm.
50% by 2030, based on the year of 2018, and also achieving a net zero emission by 2050. And how we are trying to achieve that? For example, we are looking for those companies who have some maturity on environmental care, for example. Um, Also, we are talking about water consumption, how we can reduce the water consumption in our drilling operations. In most of our drilling operation, we try to recirculate the mud using technologies, right? We try to, by doing that, we avoid to build multiple sums, right? And also the logistics planning is also a key, a very important key during the planning stage of the project, right? We don't want a lot of movement using, trucks, water trucks, or trucks by bringing products that we didn't have on site. So we try to do a good plan or planification before starting the project so that we can reduce that movement of cars. By doing that, we reduce the gas emissions, and we have a better logistic. So that is one of some example of how we are trying to accomplish those objectives in Rio Tinto.
I think it's been really interesting to see a number of companies realize that drilling is a significant contributor to emissions and see some of these reporting requirements start to come in as a result. And I think this theme that Luis has touched on a couple of times, that what we optimize for can change, right? We're not optimizing for cost alone. We have to make these choices around, are we optimizing for cost? Are we optimizing for accuracy? Are we optimizing for the degree of impact that we have on the environment in general? And so I think it's an increasingly nuanced conversation, and again, one where having the baseline data so that you can help to know what you are and aren't doing is actually a really key part of the story.
Yeah, and I think the lens of what you look at the data in also matters, right? So depending on what outcomes you're looking at, AI can tell you the most, you can use AI to give you any kind of outcome, but you have a certain lens that you're looking at it with, right? And that's where expertise and people in the field really matter, because there are multiple things that can, be changed to affect different results. Yeah. I guess just one last on the ESG kind of safety front, and this is just open to anyone, is how are expectations around environmental performance and safety reshaping the way we're designing programs? So I know, Luis, you talked a little bit more about execution, looking at the logistics as a big piece, but is it even affecting how we're designing or even making decisions on drill programs in regions, in different regions?
Absolutely, for us. Go ahead, Luis.
Oh, sorry, I interrupt you. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, for us, we're seeing a an increasing demand for directional drilling programs. So you have one pad rather than multiple pads on surface. We can access that ore body by directionally steering the drill bit into the targets that the geologists want to see. So we're reducing the surface footprint, we're reducing all of the emissions involved in moving those rigs multiple times to multiple locations. And back to water, right? You've got one hole that you're continuously refreshing that water source or recirculating that water and not moving it around. So that's a simple example. Just directional drilling programs are on the rise, and we're finding more efficiencies and less environmental impacts in doing so.
That's great. Okay, we'll go on to another one. So let's, kind of, and they all play into each other. They kind of naturally all work, but kind of going now into the site-wide kind of optimization. Maybe I'll just throw this one out to everyone to start the conversation, but what does true drilling optimization look like when you consider an entire site, not just one rig, right? So maybe just throw that out of what people think about that.
I think Luis gave a really great starting point actually a little bit earlier in the conversation where he talked about, the thing that doesn't change in the first place is the rocks. And so you have to start with an understanding of what they are, because in fact, well, one, for a start, you can't change them. They're millions of years old and they are what they are. And so really the job of the rest of the system is to respond to what the rocks are telling them, if the rocks could speak. And then the rest, I think too, we know that the system, as we think about it, it's the drill rig, but it's also the driller themselves. It's all of the supplementary equipment that sit around the drill rig. It's the fluids as well that are being pushed through that system. And you really need to be able to think about how all of them are interacting with each other. Those are the levers that you've got to pull in terms of how you optimize what your performance is actually going to be.
Exactly right. And that starts way before the drill even gets to site, right? You've got your safety and operational training. You're bundling that planning and partnership with your customer on schedule to get everything lined up to execute the program on time. So all of that information you've had from the prior program helps you get ready for the next one.
It's a good call out too.
Yeah, for me, drilling optimization means, in simple terms, how fast we respond in terms of logistics and operational stuff. It also means to me to have as much of technologies on site as I mentioned before. For me, sometimes technologies means safety, right? What are the solutions that we have in terms of safety and environmental stuff? Also, the data management. If we can, manage the data into one single hub, then we know what we are doing on site and how we can improve what we are not doing great. For example, if we are in a blind way drilling and we don't know how much time we're investing in, let's say, conditional time, then we are investing time on that and extending the timeline of the drilling project, putting more money in a project by having all the people there in more time, in terms of time. And also drilling optimization for me means team communication, how the drilling contractors communicate to each other with their teams. That's very important because we want to improve something. The way how we give a solution to one single problem is by communicating how we are working together to give the best solution for that problem. Something else that I want to add here, for example, drilling optimization for me also is to avoid fatalities. That's something very important in our operations, because if we are exposing our people, for example, our driller, our helpers, to do tripping rods a lot, so they're going to be more exposed to maybe, to a cut of the finger. And the question will be why we are doing so much tripping rods, so we need to analyze with data, what are we doing wrong? Maybe we are not using the correct beat, or maybe we are not using the correct products or parameters, whatever. And that's something bringing the the words from Jimmy, the AI maybe could give us those solutions in the future to avoid maybe rob tripping in our operations. Also, that means, the drilling optimization means increasing the ROP, the rate of penetration. And also, by the end, what I see is that if we accomplish all of those goals, we are going to reduce the cost, right? The cost are the final result of controlling all the stuff that I just said. That is for me drilling optimization.
Yeah, I think it's some really good points in there. And when you think about it, some of the key things that I heard was communication, logistics. I mean, time costs money, right? And at the end of the day, we're trying to have safe operations. We're trying to get our drill programs complete as the most efficiently as possible. It's not all about the drilling and rate of penetration. That's it's this much of the time that's being spent on that overall arching drill program. The rig moves, the logistics, hauling water, communication. Miscommunication is probably the number one thing that we see at Krux. Just as one thing is that the miscommunication between the drilling contractor and the service provider or the resource owner, but also within the resource owner, especially on a mine site, different groups aren't communicating to each other, and then logistics get held up. And so leads into my next question to Jimmy is, from the drilling contractor perspective, how do you see, or what role do you see that collaboration between the drilling contractors and mining companies play in unlocking that value that we're getting out of drilling data and for optimization?
Yeah, well, we value our partnerships with the world's top mining houses. We are where we're at today because of the people like Luis pushing that technological advancement and making the drillers get better. So it's vital for a drill contractor to remain competitive in this space by offering more technologies, evolving, and working with our partners day in and day out to continuously improve their operation and reduce their cost per meter and maximize their budgets.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I guess, kind of talking about the transparency, and we talked about the communications, to open question to the panel is, how important do you guys feel data standardization and interoperability between software providers, OEMs, drill manufacturers, you could talk about the fluids and mud companies, the resource owners, potentially even internal customers within a mine site. How important do we feel, or do you feel that this is to help with drilling optimization and the future of drilling?
I might tackle this one first up. It's a bit of a passion thing for me, actually. I'm a really massive believer that this is a really important part of how we move forward. Frankly, as a mining industry in general, I think we know that our productivity stats are not amazing, and we haven't been able to show a lot of productivity improvement over a period of time. I think, frankly, one of the reasons why is that we don't collaborate as much as we should. We all spend a lot of time thinking of all the things that we can do, but we sometimes perhaps think we can do too much ourselves rather than thinking about what's ours to do and what's more naturally somebody else's. And I think the reality is the ways that you unlock those opportunities for collaboration is by enabling data to be shared, right? So this is something that we take pretty seriously. We've put up our hands to be part of a program around the OSDU, which is a standard that's come from oil and gas, but it's going to come into mining, we hope. And really, it's us putting our money where our mouth is a little bit to say, if we want there to be open collaboration and the sharing of data, then we've got to be the first to put our hands up and say we're willing to do
it. Great.
I can give you guys an experience that I have had in some of the projects. I think that standardization of data is very important because, let's say, the geologists use a specific software, right, and a specific software that are fitted by data that comes from other technologies. If those data doesn't, or don't, communicate into the program that the geologists use, so that is an issue, and that's what happened to me in some of the projects. So the conclusion that I can say here is that standardization in terms of data communication is very important between the the manufacturing company, providers, and mining companies. And also, when in terms of managing a project, also we manage multiple contractors, right? And what we are trying to to find is a solution that have one single to communicate all the data, not only the drilling stuff, maybe the camping stuff, maybe all the activities associated or linked to a drilling project. That's something maybe in the future we can solve that, but that's also important, to have one single platform to connect all the activities related to drilling.
Okay. Okay, if that's all, I think our time here is wrapping up. So I have one final question to each panelist, and that is, what is one bold prediction that you have on how drilling and mining will be fundamentally different by 2035? And I think you've touched on a lot of the pieces throughout this, but if you had one bold prediction, 2035, that's 10 years from now, what do you think will be fundamentally different? Start with Jimmy. Put him on the spot.
My bet is, the global rig fleet will be, if not 50% more, fully autonomous and AI powered. Perhaps this has a driller that's being assisted with AI and supporting the rig, but it's going to be a total different environment in 10 years, in my opinion, and it'll be autonomous. Much like we've seen the evolution of autonomous haul trucks, we're going to be, as a drilling world, very close to that in 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think potentially it's full autonomy too, right? Why can't the rocks speak directly to the drill rigs? There's no need for the intervening piece. Sensors can tell the drill rigs directly what the rocks are and what they should do next. Jimmy, Luis, and I can retreat to a nice bar in Lima and have a pisco sour. It's a much better use of our time.
Agreed. See you there.
Done.
Something that I can add that I have, that I have as a dream is in the near future, let's say in 10 more years, it will be awesome if we have, full autonomy drilling rigs, big data analysis, right? To have a lot of data to be analyzed by the AI, data mining, rigs drilling when drillers expert at monitoring the operators. They can have like a big room monitoring all the screens, even not in the side, watching a lot of, parameters, helped by the AI, to avoid future problems, because that is the most important thing. We want to anticipate the issues in the drill site, so that we can expose more. We can expose more our people in the in the drill site. Maybe sensor all the way the platform, maybe recognizing the people who is there. Maybe a software can tell us, hey, this person is not allowed to be in that rig because he needs to, to complete a medical exam, for example. Make cameras on real time, showing the operations, maybe what I call LWL, which is logging while drilling, or the MWL, which is measuring while drilling. So all the data integrated. That's my dream. I hope to be there, to be in this world, to see that in the near future.
That's great. I'd like to thank you all for joining me today for this panel. I think we had some great conversation. And, from AI to automation to ESG, we kind of went through it, but it's clear that drilling is no longer about what just happens at the rig. It's how we connect people, data, systems to make better decisions faster. And I think the future of drilling requires us all and more of us, right? We need more experts in the field to drive some of these technologies and these advancements, right? So I think it requires mining companies, contractors, tech providers, OEMs to all work together. And so the bold predictions you just heard paint a picture of an industry that's smarter, more collaborative, and more efficient than before. So I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. I hope this session has sparked some ideas, challenged some of your assumptions, and gave you something to take back to your teams. And let's keep the conversation going. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you, Jody.